Good evening. This is George Lees. Gonna make some explicit revelations on some of the religious jokes that are 2000 years old and involve really vicious and lewd jokes about Christianity, about the monarchy, about the faking of the New Testament, and about some of the loveliest tunes ever written that are about all of those frauds brought together into the piss artist sector. Okay, I've told you many times now about the defrauding of the New Testament and about the role of the family, the Pisos, in that. I've told you a little bit about Christianity and the involvement of the Rothschilds as financial advisors to the Vatican. There in that image there you can see this chap here is Kenneth Kalman. He's a former colleague of mine. He's involved with the running and the administration of both Durham University, where I have my visiting chair, I get no pay at all, and all of their leaders bail out because I expose what they do. And their leader was a man who has interviewed me. His name is Christopher Higgins, and he was a pharma magnate, which means that he's well placed to profit from the university abuses of how to sell pharmaceuticals to people who do not need the pharmaceuticals. Basically, in the sporting field, if we were to be drug free, you can have a series of people that are champions of their cause without the help of artificial devices or any form of drug abuse. Now, the steroids that launched Lance Armstrong's career and allowed Lance Armstrong to be a world leader for 10 years in the cycling sagas, all of it, they pick their champions, they pick their musicians, they pick their literary output and the inner circle writers, and the most influential inner circle writers of all time are the Piso family. Now, all of this story is told in the images, and I've told you about the use of the word pie from that Piso word, and it becomes an icon for the hippos, the horse. But the pie itself in Scotland is a joke about the female genitalia. There's a hot pie and there is a hot vagina. Okay, isn't that funny? And when you see the words of Rossini's song, which I'm going to play to you in a few minutes, you see that all of this. So Gioacchino Rossini, Otelo, Assisa a pie d'un salice, and when I translate that using Google Translate, what you get is Assisa a pie d'un salice becomes Assisa at the foot of a willow. Let's have a listen to it and listen to how lovely the music is. Rossini and the links to Paolo Rossi and all of the cover-ups involving the election or the picking of an Italian president to replace the totally corrupted Berlusconi character. The choice that they made was the man Renzi, which is just a cover for my friend Jeff Rents, and I'm going to tell you more about Jeff Rents and Dean Henderson in the next video that I make on a separate topic on the brutalization of Russia, the use of secret Air Force facilities in the North by Northwest region right next to Missoula, Montana. But let's stay with the biblical fraud first. Okay, so the joke about the pie is that the word pie in Italian means foot. Are you getting it now? Fergie's toe jobs, Jesus' obligation to wash the feet of his visitors, even on the night before his tragic death. The man never lived. When you look at Lily Allen's videos of his Christian cross circulating the earth in orbit, he never got home either. All of this is interlocked with all of the massive Jewish frauds, and I've explained for you how the Hanukkah festival is like the Easter. So the dates for Hanukkah, which is the Chinook joke and the jokes about the haka in New Zealand rugby and the jokes about Holofernes and all of the ancient stories in the Bible, they're about the power base for the world. And the Rossini Othello thing about a black man in the palace, yeah, it's written by Shakespeare, and all of Shakespeare's writing are written by teams of academics and literary experts like Enid Blyton, like the man who was in the Far East, I forget his name, but he produced all of the stories from the Jungle Book. I forget the Jungle Book. That should be enough for you to realise who that person is. He's part of the colonial empire in the Far East, upon which the sun has not yet set. Okay? The Piso frauds are quite explicitly told and explained by Abelard Reuchlin. He lives in the Washington region, way up underneath the Canadian border on the west coast of America, very near to Monterey, okay, where the devil declares that the globalist project has started. And I've just revealed in the last couple of days that Mount Doom in the Lord of the Rings movie is not at the foot of the willow tree where the hobbits got entwined in the roots of the willow and had to be taken out of that situation by a character called Tom Bombadil. He lives at Hayes End, that is hell. Hayes End, on the farm that I lived on the Balfour farm where I was born into this world, there was an Auntie Esther Hay who lived at one end, and at the other end the name of the family were Drew Carr. Yeah, and the car is the good end where people are left alone. The hellish end is down near the Balfour farm and the Newton Don estate, which if you turn it around becomes the land of Nod. Yeah, all of the jokes and all of the geopolitical frauds are explained in the nomenclature of the human writings. Okay, so Othello's translation of Assisa, a pie d'un salice, is Assisa at the foot of a willow. So can you see why people wash the feet? The feet are the focus of the brilliant white and shining feet, and right at the bottom of the shin bone we have the foot. Okay, now the word pie though is much more important than all of the kosher butchery and the shins. Yeah, and the Schindler's List and the Shining and all of the emphasis on the 24 parts of the body that are kosher in terms of the Jewish festivals. Okay, the pie joke is absolutely vicious. Okay, and there you see Princess Fergie having her toe sucked by Prince Andrew, and that is the cover-up for all of their involvement in the terrorism, for their involvement in the bringing down of the Twin Towers, for Prince Andrew's involvement in running the British trade delegation for 10 or 12 years or so after the Twin Towers had been brought down under their chain of command. The religious fraud is massive. I'm now going to play you the tune. You may be able to see a little bit more. Kalman is a profiteer in the university sector. What he's done is to launch people like Snowden into false news in the university sector. So Kalman appointed Snowden the whistleblower, who is supposed to have been a whistleblower on American secrets and revealing those secrets to Russia in the Putin joke that we've explained entirely in the videos about Hanukkah and the Jewish festivals. Yeah, the Putin and the awarding of great chunks of the world to Putin and Stalin is a joke about the warmongering and the profiteering that results from that. Okay, and let me play you the tune because it's lovely, and all of it ties into these much larger frauds. This is the fraud that I talked about yesterday in the war crimes jokes, in the deployment of Poppaea. Poppaea is a character in the Roman court. Just a few generations after King Herod was part of the team that fixed up the Bible big time and began to launch all of those jokes about Alpha to Omega, Christianity, the Paschal candle. Alpha to Omega is about Arius. The first letter is A and the last letter of Piso is O. That is the joke about the Christianity fraud, and all of it is shallow, and the vulva part comes into the four fruits that are part of the Jewish festivals. The Easter day is not strictly regulated in Christianity. It roves around a bit, and we've explained how Hanukkah occurs on a date near the 25th of December at the end of the Christian year, but is not necessarily on the 25th of December, which is the Christianity sanity clause jokes. Yeah, everything is vicious, and they're prepared to laugh at the death of the war dead and the poppy profiteering. I'm going to play you two things now. I'm going to play you the Queen's Christmas speech in 2014, and then I'm going to play you the song about the pie sung in the movie, in the opera written by Rossini, involving the pie joke and the links to the Otelo story about the black American the black person in Shakespeare's output. That is a joke about Obama and his wife and their capacity to take over the White House, win the Peace Prize like Henry Kissinger, and abuse the whole world and cast it into a sovereign debt crisis that is unprecedented. We're in about the 7th or 8th tier of that toxic debt pool now, and all of the jokes that they share on religion are about the war dead. And when you see the BBC's version of it, it is no surprise that the Time Team output has now been banned on copyright grounds. They are ashamed of the jokes that they launched at the London Olympic opening ceremony, with the Queen arriving under a parachute as if she were participating in the conflicts that are all over our globe on the basis of religious rivalry, religious genocide and religious martyrdom that is driven by the capacity of religions to try and impose themselves on innocent pagans all over the world. That project is also completed now. First, let me get you the Queen's speech for 2014. Okay? And it is quite cynical. There are references to a woman out of Coventry That is the woman who rode bare naked on the Piso hippos through the town. Yeah, I can play you that song as well if you want. Do you get it? The Queen is prepared to tell lies about her dynasty, which makes the Queen in Britain. Her dynasty is illegitimate for 160 years. Okay? I can play you the Pie song first. It's classic. I would love you to hear it. I would love you to understand that takes you into the washing of the feet. When Kalman Rothschild visited the Pope way back centuries ago, he was the first person to get the Pope to kiss his ring. It's not the ring there, it's the ring on his finger. Yeah, it is the ring that is the icon for the globalized ring of power and the inner circle that is the world's elites, who are capable of speaking Latin and Greek and are capable of taking the ownership of the world into private hands, and all of the working men are culled as part of the Poppaea Roman court jokes, and all of the Anzacs in the other hemisphere are killed by Churchills and by the Rothschilds, who run the whole show globally. And I met a woman from Australia today who pretends that she's a counter movement to Rupert Murdoch's activities, and she's trying to get the truth out about El Nino. Her truth is that El Nino is something that is happening because humans consume too much oxygen and we exhale too much carbon dioxide. She wants to have the tax on breathing. That is a shameful legacy of all of these frauds. Everything that is imposed on the poor people, like VAT, is a scam to steal from the poor people, and ultimately these jokes steal their lives and the lives of our children and our grandchildren. Okay, let me now play you the Queen's speech and see how ironical and cynical our monarchy are. I cannot get the web pages to open. Do you get the toe jobs for Fergie? Fergie is the woman at Manchester United. Fergie is the princess who's been disgraced. I don't know whether or not she is shameful. I would love to talk to her. I can repair her reputation, and I will shame the monarchs for what they do to the innocent females in their family if that woman is actually innocent. The crimes that they commit in wartime are massive compared to the crimes that they commit with the Twin Towers and the terror out of the Parliament buildings. I read to you the other day one war memorial in St Giles Cathedral that was for the Scots Fusiliers. There were 4,600 privates killed in one regiment alone. In the Twin Towers, only 4,000 Gentiles were killed in the premeditated attack so that we could then victimize Islam. Okay, I'll need to get this done quickly because I'm going to be very short of battery power on my camera, but they will not let me open. Oh, here we go. Okay, so let's listen to the Queen's speech and the cynicism that is in all of it. It's about a temporary truce with the Germans, where the Saxe-Coburgs came from Germany, the Hanoverian dynasty came from Germany, blind Prince Charles of Cumbria came from Germany. All of them are given their power base by the Rothschilds, the money lenders, and all of them abuse it. They do not have the courage, unless you're Princess Diana, to confront the family team or their moneylenders or their bedroom breeding chambers, and all that happens to the people that confront those issues are that they get topped and they get a shallow grave, and their sons then become the next heir to the throne, or their brothers or their husbands. Yeah, and their husband is then able to marry the woman that he had children with when that woman was only 18 years old. That is Camilla, and her brother dies in the revolving door between the land grabs of the World Wildlife Fund, JP Morgan, and the business empires that are actually charitable frauds, like the World Wildlife Fund and like Greenpeace, run to take the minds away from what they do in all of these vicious jokes. Okay, so Queen's speech 2014, and it is just a hollow joke about everything that I am raising for you as a sad indictment about how our world is run by power brokers that tell lies relentlessly through all of the media events.
In the ruins of the old Coventry Cathedral is a sculpture of a man and a woman reaching out to embrace each other. The sculpture was inspired by the story of a woman who crossed Europe on foot after the war to find her husband. Casts of the same sculpture can be found in Belfast and Berlin, and it is simply called Reconciliation.
So that's Lady Godiva with her tits out riding through Coventry so that these people can continue to commit crimes against their children, their cousins, their wives, their relatives in Portugal, Carlos I, dead at the hands of her predecessors, and all of it is celebrated in massive palaces that are gifts from their impoverished people and their taxpayers. Yeah, I wrote to her asking her whether or not she would be prepared to make an intervention on behalf of British citizens and to reveal the basis for the sovereign debt fraud that she has led our country into. She said, through the writings of her aides, who include the Queen's equerries, Mr. Strang Steele, who took my son in the best summer of his life into sub-Saharan Africa, into Malawi, where the Ebola crisis was launched as a cover for my explicit exposures of her Commonwealth's greed. Okay, the Commonwealth concept is itself a massive joke. The common people never get a life because they insist on taking everything from globalized society that could be shared with globalized society, and that concept is called civilization. Instead, she imposes the constitutional monarchy, and its imposition is on the Scottish nation, because the Scottish nation is led by traitors, like the Westminster Parliament is led by traitors. Okay, I am not negotiating with them. I am now proclaiming that they are evil and that they are tyrants and that they will be brought down because of my force majeure campaign and all of the exposures of all of my fraud, of their frauds. Notice she's got her hands crossed nervously across her pie. Yeah, that is the Piso joke that they share with the elites and all of the people that they killed in the less powerful European monarchies over millennia. Okay, right then, let's listen to a little bit more about the fairy stories about how much they would love to be living in peace with their international neighbours in the royal family.
Reconciliation is the peaceful end to conflict, and we were reminded of this in August, when countries on both sides of the First World War came together to remember in peace. The ceramic poppies at the Tower of London drew millions, and the...
Can you see it? Ceramic poppies. That is a profiteering merchandising exercise, and her husband, yeah, Prince Philip, runs the poppy fund after Butcher Haig croaks. Yeah, Butcher Haig is a local hero here. He was the leader at St Andrews University, where her children are taught to steal from their citizens under global commonwealth, and all of their not negotiable pay rises are given to them as a duty from this country. They do no work at all. They tour the world. They run the Navy. They run the Air Force. Their children are prepared to kill under certain circumstances, and when all of the family are exposed as treasonous terrorists to defame other countries and to impose wars based on religious divide, she is God's representative in the Church of England in England, and her Archbishop of Canterbury is the son of Winston Churchill's private secretary. That's the Archbishop of the Church of England. He is a former banking executive, and he is a criminal in sub-Saharan Africa, where all of the Lonro Empire is run by Prince Charles's financial advisor, Christopher Chambers. So can you see it? Ceramic poppies. Isn't that poetic? If you're tucking it away in your royal pockets as you drive all of the troops into poverty, they get no pensions. The privates in the war forces now wear microphones so that if there are war crimes accusations to be levelled at NATO, then the private who gets it in the neck and is launched into the war grave tourist industry, he is accountable for the war crimes as well. Field Marshal Ing, who's the boss at Aegis Defence Systems Limited, with Boateng and with the mercenary army leader that runs the Trident scandal, they get away scot-free and they get massive pensions, and they're able to brag about their earning power in private security companies all over the Knights of Malta's world. That is all over the globe, because she owns huge chunks of the globe. She does not do any thinking. She just does what the money lenders tell her that she must do to keep their power base, and that includes the killing of her daughter-in-law and the mother of the heirs to the throne after Prince Charlie has croaked. Yeah, he's Prince Charlie that is married to Camilla and is the joker that runs all of those scams involving his first son Simon Day, and all of the ill treatment of that child when he was laundered through Gosport and out of the UK into the telecom industry in Australia. And all of it is sick, sick, sick. Let me now play you the tune by Rossini that shares the pie Vagina, the hot pie in Scotland, the Scottish pie joke. The pie is the Warhorse joke. The pie is the joke about Elizabeth Taylor winning the Grand National. And all of the jokes about Shakespearean writings take you into the writing of Othello, and all of that reminds you that the writing of Macbeth is a cover for the crimes of Prince Eddie, who was interned in Glamis Castle which is Macbeth's host, and all of it is a cover-up about the blood on the hands of the Rothschilds assassination bureaus and breeding chambers as they run the world as an illegitimate empire for 160 years of royal tyranny, where there is no honest king or queen. All of it is now covering up their massive financial frauds in the issuance of money. So the pie in the Assisi thing here, let me get it up for you. So it is Rossini, Otelo, and if you just hit the word pie, it will get you the title of this lovely, lovely song. When the gods heard me playing it for the first time, we had a horrible rainstorm, and I didn't understand that. But then when I translated it into At the Feet of the Willow, the willow tree is one of the trees that are in all of the jokes about the shrubberies, and the Monty Python sing about the mighty larch and the willow, and the fleets that have been launched by Prince Philip to launder narcotics into the South Pacific are based on the hearts of oak principle. That is the hearts of oak that are the English Navy, and that is the might of the Rule Britannia Empire, and all of it is a joke that was shared from the Roman court, and all roads lead to Rome. We've mentioned the epicenter of the religious frauds in Paris at the end of the Roman road at Saint Denis. We've mentioned the Roman road that leads up the Icknield Way and leads to the appointment into the Foreign Office in America of the Rice sisters. That is Condoleezza, and I forget the name of the other one. All of it is a joke about the nomenclature of the world's tyrants and the owners of the unjust world's financial experts. Everything they do now results in the issuance of democratic funding in every country. It does not go to the country, it goes to the viciously greedy leaders and their elite servants in financial services and the banking dynasties and in the false religions. All religions are false. The paganism has been culled. Everything happened in Monterey, and all of it is explained when Robert Louis Stevenson went to Monterey and got in league with the Americans. They culled the Spaniards who were interested in finding the gold with all of the other people that went to the west coast of America. That is then the whole world has been consumed by migrants, and that is the diaspora joke that they think is really, really funny. The music is lovely, and when I've explained it, the gods get a little bit satiated by that. When you understand that the whole tune and the whole of Shakespeare's output, the whole of the writings of Enid Blyton and the man who wrote about the elephants in the Jungle Book thing, I cannot remember the name of his man, a typical imperialist person out there in the rubber planting trees, and all of those massive estates run in India, in other people's countries, where we're allowed to take the automatic weapon and bring them down to teach them that they should not get uppity and they should not ask for any sort of civil rights in the country that they were born into. That is how the monarchy works globally now. So if you're curious about issues, use Google Translate. So there's the translation that I've just done. Assisa appai d'un salice, Frederica von Stade. Assisa at the foot of a willow. So the foot word is the key word in all of the Fergie toe sucking jokes, and all of the Jesus washing the feet and the shining feet, and all of the stories about being courteous to visitors who are people who are in the apostles sector. The apostles are the intel services provided out of Cambridge University, which with Göttingen and the other universities in Heidelberg and Oxford were immune from bombing, like petty France, where the Chancellor and the Bank of England leaders live in a safe zone that is immune from bombing. The palaces are immune from bombing. Everything that I've disclosed about assessors coming from my local region, where they work in feudalism, they issue the furniture to the serfs that are appointed by the big elite leaders of our massive estates, the owners of the River Tweed, the owners of all of those Tweed foundations, Walter Scott Society. All of the things that they defraud from our country are explained in the feudal laws. Okay, so the jokes are about the willow, and that is why the willow tree scene that was written about in the Lord of the Rings movie, where the freedom fighters got swallowed up by the willow, at its foot, it is ever so sensitive if that spills into the Jesus issues about washing the feet. And when Kalman visited the Vatican, Kalman Rothschild, and began to take over their finances, he was not obliged to kiss the Pope's feet. He was obliged only to kiss the ring on his finger. Okay, and that is the Kalman story that takes you into Glasgow University, Durham University, and all of the foundations that they have to steal from the healthcare industries and the pharmaceutical output, which is why Chris Higgins, who rejected me at an interview, has resigned from Durham University. They have stolen all of the equipment that I brought to Durham University. I was a professor in pharmacology in the most successful university in New Zealand, and when I went to Durham, they gave the job to one of my subordinates from Sunderland University, where it is only just achieved the status of university. All of my kit is in their empire. Chris Higgins refused to give me a job, and what they're doing now is asset stripping the NHS. That is Kenneth Kalman. Yeah, Sir Kenneth Kalman. Now he is involved in the covering up of their frauds and these massive 2,000-year-old jokes by appointing whistleblowers called Snowden to Glasgow University, where he now trades across the bloody referendum border. Scotland has been sold by traitors, and Kalman is just a profiteer cross-border in the healthcare frauds that dismember all of the elderly patients in our country, because they are victims of polypharmacy imposed upon the doctors. Otherwise the doctors lose 40% of their income. And when you look at the activities of the polypill people that are in the, I forget what the name of the foundation is, it's ever such an elite grouping of medics in the English side of the border, and I forget what the trust or the foundation is, but what they've got is a polypill where you put several drugs into a capsule that is ingested at the same time. So what you're doing is taking away the versatility of the drug treatment, and you just give them a massive anodyne for things that they pretend it will cure. it is a lead-in to the dismemberment of all of the elderly people, and they end up in care homes at £600 a month. And when my wife leaves me because I'm lacking in funds now, because I'm exposing all of these frauds, she's prepared to rent a house and to leave the house that we entirely owned and only have to pay £100 a week for our grocery bill. Everything that she's imposed on my family is because she's ashamed of what her brother has done in the dental sector. Along these lines, like Kenneth Kalman, the deployment of whistleblowers in Russia, where Putin is entirely a member of the profiteering team, is a shallow joke at how the world is run. And now that I'm meeting people on the streets of my hometown, I've met almost a dozen of them today who now realise that my way is the only way that the world can be taken back to decency, and I'm ever so grateful to all of them for coming forward from all of their different countries and talking to me openly and genially. Friendly shakes of the hand and broad smiles and a deep understanding of what the G8 and the G20 countries have done to the poor countries all over the globe. That includes massive countries that are almost continents in themselves, like Russia and China. They are now entirely owned by people like Kalman and all of those quislings that are appointed by the Rothschilds to steal from the entire world. They cover up the financial crimes and all of these vicious religious jokes. Let me show you the picture again. I think I've explained every facet of all of these pictures in the last couple of videos. So that's Charles Bean, the war correspondent for Gallipoli, and I met someone who was pretending today that they are down on Rupert Murdoch. But Rupert Murdoch's female family members are really decent people. That is the Freuds in the Chipping Norton set. I do not agree with them that those people are decent, because they're in the Chipping Norton set and they are prepared to send people to war relentlessly and into the shallow graves. And when you see the jokes about the vulva and all of the cross-party and cross-religion frauds that are the pie jokes and the genitalia jokes and all of the capacities to kiss Jesus' feet and to do all of the right things in the religious frauds, at every time they ask you to join a diaspora or a mission or a tax-paying commitment in Bethlehem, everybody jumps to that drum, and then they make a joke about cheating in the sporting events and killing people in China who were not prepared to run for their country on a Sunday as a moral commitment to the massive fraud that is Christianity. Okay, so there's one image, there's the second image. It's the same story. We've got more emphasis on Kalman on this one, and there's his team at Durham and the links to the NHS and the Snowden whistleblowing frauds that take you into Russia. Okay, John Patterson has just popped up. He is very useful as confirmation that all of these plots are not just in my imagination. Look at the devotion with which they suck the toes, and they put it on the front page of Rupert Murdoch's son. Yeah, Fergie toe job. I've imposed Kalman on top of that. There is the royal marriage with the prince who brought down the Twin Towers using the Canadian Air Force and the American Air Force and all of the power of the media that Rupert Murdoch has at his disposal. Let's listen to the cynical song written about the Otelo story and the black man who becomes the president equivalent. Obama's wife has spent $2 million on family holidays. Listen for the words. Yeah. kissing the feet. Down at the willowy feet. The willowy feet very likely to be in silk stockings from the thigh down. And that's a mandolin. Look it up, Paul McCartney and mandolin, and see all of his jokes about the postman coming to call, the peacocks, and all of the reluctance of the elites in the massive mansions to share even a cup of tea with the postman. The mandolin looks like a cock and the bullocks. Yeah, isn't it funny? Everything is trivialized. All of the icons. Nelson stands on the female penis in the Trafalgar Square, right in front of the British Museum, where all of these works of arts are jokes against the people and the taxpayers and the victims in their eternal, perpetual warmongering. And that is run by the university leaders like Kenneth Calman, Lord Patton, and all of the Russell Group leaders. But when you find the Russell Group leaders on the elite dukes' interlocks, then you think, are they really the culprits, or are they just covers for the bigger picture and the bigger criminality, all the way up to the monarchy, through the Ogilvies, through the pharmaceutical industry, through the stagecoach empire, and all of the links to Boateng, Aegis Defence Limited, and the Trident nuclear weapons scandal that could have freed Scotland, but were it for the treason in the Scottish political leadership sector. So what the Queen was about to tell us in that speech was that in World War I, in the trenches, where all of the weapons were shared by the Krupps are now the owners of the Schloss hotel chain that is consuming the tourism industry in Scotland. They have got massive hotel chains, but they are in a sovereign debt crisis, and all of those hotel chains are being sold off as quickly as they possibly can be by people who were victims of the Colditz internment scams, where their slaves and their batmen were allowed to be interned in elite prisons like Colditz, and all of them were allowed to make jokes of it in the Two Ronnies Chipping Norton sector. Okay, I like this music. I'm going to listen to a little bit more with you, and I try and develop the conscience about it. Her feet are not depicted. She might have a eunuch down there sucking it till his heart's contented. And when you look at the Kojak jokes and the lollipops, you can see that law enforcement is not going to change it. Okay, would you like to hear the Queen talking up Lady Godiva? And you can look up Lady Godiva. You also find pop songs on those themes. Yeah, so everything is a vicious joke. I've just realised that when I used to write to the President of the EU, who was trained, his name is Barroso, he's a Spaniard, is filthy rich. He is the boss at the European Union, and when I write to his aide and his news editor, her name is Pia. She never replies. It's part of the same joke. The Pia name is also the name of the ABBA singers who sing about the loss of all of the central banks by all of the countries on our globe and the monarchy triumph in taking them over. Okay, I think we can go back to where we were.
And the only possible reaction to seeing them and walking among them was silence.
So that's the merchandising that she and Prince Phil sell to profit from all of the war dead. And when you see her parachuting into the London Olympics and Mr. Bean joking about the killing of all of those Anzacs, then it is vicious, and it's gonna come out, and they know it's coming out. And that is why the Spanish and the Dutch monarchs have abdicated. That is why the new Pope has a limp. That is why the old Pope was a Hitler Youth member and is now in an elite park hotel in Rome, who with Cardinal O'Brien are totally immune from prosecution, even for their profiteering, regardless of the roles in the child abuse stories. I do not buy into the child abuse stories. Yeah, some of the children in my hometown are dead ringers for those children that have been abused, and some of them worship at some of the newer religious movements. Okay, I will not tell you any more. I know all of the people in my town. I talk to all of them openly in all of the religious denominations. We have no synagogue in Kelso. When I talk to the people from Newcastle who are Jewish, with the Lubavitcher locks, I talk to them, and within minutes of our discussion being ended, there was a massive lightning storm, and that was on the estate where the Black Douglas brutalised Roxburgh Castle. Yeah, and all of it is shameful.
For every poppy, a life, and a reminder of the grief of loved ones left behind.
Isn't that funny? So you're trading all of those war dead for something that you sell to the survivors and the grieving families. None of the war dead get mentioned as individuals, so that none of our parishes celebrate the achievements and the bravery of those that died for her profiteering campaigns. And Prince Phil is even more ruthless. He runs the narcotics, he dismembers anybody and murders even cousins like Lord Mountbatten who try to break into that profit stream. She allows the triumvirate that runs the narcotics into the South Pacific to sleep with her and sire her children. Because that is an imposition.
Anyone who fought in that war is still alive.
That is imposed by the moneylenders who shag Queen Victoria relentlessly. That is the King of Kings joke, and I keep telling it and retelling it. All of it is undeniable. It was published in Punch and all of the humorist outlets at the time when their royal family was being abused by its moneylenders and its assassination threat.
But we remember their sacrifice, and indeed the sacrifice of all those in the armed forces who serve and protect us today. In 1914, many people thought the war would be over by Christmas.
Is that right? They thought the war would be over by Christmas. Look at the video I made yesterday on it being a joke that it was even going to be over by 1917. The 1916 massacre of the Irish, who did not want a part of this family's profiteering, and they did not want to give their lives for someone who had taken over their country for centuries already and brutalised it relentlessly and sunk ships so that we could join them in conflict, and we could break up the Irish nation, some of whom fought for Britain, some of whom fought for Germany, and we began to trade the weapons that the Kruppses make in Germany all over sectarian Ireland and right into the sectarian religious issues that follow on almost immediately as soon as the war is over. All of the training for that is done in Spain. All of the laundering of the Nazis, who are Germans like her, yeah, they changed their name to Windsor entirely for respectability reasons. And the murders of their cousins in Portugal are totally for the Portuguese colonial interests in Africa, where she was found in Kenya, where the Mau Mau atrocities, when she was only, I think, 18 years old, and she was appointed to the throne. Prince Philip had a tenner in his pocket when he came to our country from Greece. He was recommended to her by Mountbatten. He later killed him for his capacity to give Prince Phil a leg up and an introduction to Jackie O's second husband, Onassis, who was part, with Winston Churchill, of the narcotics laundering empire through the Med into Australasia, and the use of Phillips light tubes and the Spanish monarchy's involvement in the electricity company that is Phillips. It is totally sinful, and this is total cynicism.
But sadly by then the trenches were dug, and the future shape of the war in Ukraine.
Guess who dug the trenches? It's like the victims of the firing squad digging their graves before they're put in front of the firing squad. They have no other option. They are conscripted. If they flee from the conflict, they are the traitors, and she is the heroine.
Europe was set.
But her dad, in inverted commas, is actually Winston Churchill, and the person who played the role of her dad is the imbecile with the IQ of 70. He is incapable of making any decision, and that is why his wife was a commoner. That is the Queen Mum who drank the gin, went to the GGs, which is a joke about the Governor General in all of that Commonwealth being more powerful than any elected officer in all of that Commonwealth. Fantasy. It is a fraud project, and it makes her one of the richest people on the globe, but you cannot find their director numbers because they're not prepared to tell the truth about anything that they do in life.
But as we know, something remarkable did happen that Christmas, exactly 100 years ago today. Without any instruction or command, the shooting stopped, and German and British soldiers met in no man's land. Photographs were taken and gifts exchanged. It was a Christmas truce.
And Germany got beat 7-0, or Germany beat Brazil 7-0 in the Football World Cup. Everything is staged, everything is stitched up, and the whole world is a lie.
Truces are not a new idea. In the ancient world, a truce was declared for the duration of the Olympic Games.
Everything that they are ashamed of, they have to cover. Yeah, Mr. Bean opened the Olympics. The Fleming jokes about the Bond movies are massive frauds. The gold being sequestered from American citizens and all of the Bing Crosby war bonds jokes are jokes at the citizens and the dead's expense. The people who went over there, the Yanks are coming, that is despite the pledges of FDR never to take his citizens into war. And when they had the boat race, that is the elite boat race between the no bombing zones in Cambridge and Oxford. It was sponsored for both sides by the Mellon Bank. Mellon is a greedy bastard that is the Chancellor equivalent in America in the lead up to the Fort Knox sequester the citizens' gold project and take it from the citizens so that we can pretend that we are in a justified conflict. When that happened, Mellon's hometown, he had a little fishery with a dam at it in his hometown. The dam wall broke when they declared war, and it killed thousands of people in Mellon's hometown. Mellon is the code word for the underworld in the Lord of the Rings film, and the Prime Minister in Norway is called Quisling, Prime Minister Quisling. His nickname is Gimli. All of it is a joke. And when these people die, they get buried in Frogmore, which is the joke about the frog being kissed and it might turn into the prince that saves the world. Yeah, it has never happened yet. Mrs. Simpson is in Frogmore. Yeah, Mrs. Simpson and the abdicated king, with a much higher IQ than the one that took the fall for World War II. They spent their life peacefully and elitely in partying in Paris for all of the time that all of the Commonwealth and all of the countries around our globe were being persecuted by them for personal reasons and for a massive profit stream that only the Flemings and the people in the tax havens can explain to you. I've got their director numbers. They have brutalized Syria, they are brutalizing Ukraine. Everything that they have done to take over the central banks is now completed. The Christianity fraud is totally completed, and it is about to cave, because all of it is coming pouring out with every video I make. Picture will make her royal outcast. Yeah, world photo sensation. This is about toe sucking. It's a cover for the Jesus Christ story and the washing of the feet and the ancient translation of the word pi, meaning foot. That's why the willow story has been left out. Do you know what the cricket bat is made from? Willow. Yeah. And all of the golfing frauds, all of the jokes about the Pistorius trial, all of the jokes about KP, Katy Perry, Kenyon products, supermarkets in Kenya where the Mau Mau massacres have now been forgiven by the participants in that, and that includes acting people whose